This is Smart Poker Study episode 209, answering questions about 3betting, cbetting, and set mining. In last week's episode number 208, I discussed how you can smartly and gradually up the aggression in your preflop and postflop games. It's poker study time, y'all! I do appreciate you tuning in multiple times per week and for sharing the show with other poker people. Please keep it up. This is how we grow. And I hope you had a fun and candy-filled or maybe even poker-filled Halloween a couple days ago. But we are always looking ahead on the Smart Poker Study podcast. So now we are in for a brand new month of November. And of course, that means new rewards for Patreon supporters. You know, I love creating this 3 times weekly show for y'all, and the time that I spend creating it is supported by everyone on Patreon. So to start your support, go to patreon.com/smartpokerstudy. There are different levels of support with different rewards attached, and your support shows me that you enjoy the show and that you want me to keep on keeping on. And I mentioned it before, but November is here, so more rewards are coming out pretty soon. The training video this month is going to be about thinking through your decisions on the felt. I'm going to show you how I force myself to stay focused on the action at hand and how I think or what I think about before every single decision. And in the podcast reward this month, that's going to be about profitably isolating limpers, so you don't want to miss out on these valuable rewards. Once you begin your support, you'll have access to this month's rewards and access to the archive of patron-only content. So please start your support. Go to patreon.com/smartpokerstudy. Well, it is Q&A time. I have 3 of them today from Ruben, Max, and Daniel. So please visit the show notes page for everything I discussed today, along with screenshots and links at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod209. And for a little bonus today, in my answer to the second question, I am going to discuss something that I call the board texture spreadsheet. Now, I've discussed this spreadsheet before on other podcasts, but because I'm mentioning it again today, I'm going to make it available through today's show notes. So once again, go to smartpokerstudy.com/pod209 for that board texture spreadsheet. And then later on in question 2, I'll discuss it a little bit more. Well, it's time. Let's rock and roll, sweet Susie. Gambate.
Oh, we can handle it. We're professionals.
Now look, this is gonna get weird, all right? It's pretty freaky, but it's safe. There's no reason to be scared.
Oh, no, Daddy don't get scared.
Really? Good.
So question 1 today comes to us from Ruben, and it's about 3betting and hand reading practice. Here's what Ruben said in an email. I think that my most notable leak revolves around 3bet pots, as the raiser or as the caller, both in position and out of position. Whenever I don't hit the flop, I feel very confused whether or not to bet. If betting, how much and what is the best line? If I check, I feel very lost and don't know how to continue in the pot. Well, thank you very much for that email and for letting me know about this leak of yours, Ruben. Now, I want to tell you that what you just mentioned is not necessarily a leak. It sounds more to me that you just lack some 3bet strategies in your skill set. Because your leak revolves around everything 3betting, I mean, you mentioned it in your email, calling, raising, in position and out of position, and what to do on the flop. You basically just asked me, how do I play 3bet hands? I mean, that's not necessarily a leak, like I said. That's just a lack of 3betting skills. So to help you, Ruben, and for everybody else, I'm going to give you some general guidelines for 3betting and 3bet pots. I'm also going to name some other sources that you can learn from. But before I get to all of that, let me tell you how you can organize some further 3bet studies, because I think that's what you need, Ruben. So first, I want you to study making 3bets pre-flop. I want you to create or find some ranges to use both for value and for your bluff 3bets. Also, you need to work out the sizing that you should use and who to 3bet against. Second, after you study all of that and you feel pretty confident in making 3bets, you're going to study open raising and then calling 3bets. So you'll devise ranges that have very good equity versus your opponent's 3bet. And you're going to do a lot of Flopzilla work, seeing how different 3bet ranges and 3bet calling ranges interact with the flop. And we'll get a little bit into that in question 2 as well. Now, third thing for you, Ruben, you're going to study some post-flop in regular 2-bet pots and study these as the pre-flop raiser. Every single post-flop consideration in 2-bet pots, those smaller pots, one raiser, one caller, or multiple callers, but those 2-bet pot considerations, those also apply to 3-bet pots. And because 2-bet pots happen so much more frequently than 3-bet pots, it's a better place to start to improve your post-flop understanding. And the fourth thing I want you to study after you're done with 1, 2, and 3, the fourth is that you're going to study post-flop play as the pre-flop caller now. So your opponent raised, you called, now we go to the flop. You're going to study all of that stuff. So you want to think about different plays that you can make, both when you're in position and out of position. You also want to do some math related to work on like stack to pot ratio and implied odds and calling to draw out to your various draws. You also want to come up with different lines that you can take for bluffs and for value both. Now, fifth and finally, after you've studied all of that, you're going to study post-flop in 3-bet pots. So you'll take everything that you learned with the 2-bet pot strategies, and you'll consider how they might change or be more impactful in 3-bet pots. So, for example, stack-to-pot ratio is much lower in those 3-bet pots. So the fold equity that your bluffs have in regular 2-bet pots, it's much higher than the fold equity in 3-bet pots because your opponents are going to be so much more committed to that growing pot size in 3-bet pots. Alrighty, so now let's get to some general 3-betting strategies. The most important thing when it comes to improving your 3-bet game is knowing what you want to accomplish with your 3-bet and also when calling 3-bets. You also want to see signs that you will accomplish it. So here's a quick example. You want to 3-bet bluff pre-flop, right? Well, your opponent should have a wide opening range, like 20, 30, 40% or so. You also want to see a high fold to 3-bet, like 65% or greater. It's also great when they're in a steal position, like they cut off the button or the small blind, because it makes it more likely that they're stealing from you. And being in position, so if you're 3-betting from the button versus their cutoff, it makes it more likely that they're going to fold because they do not want to go post-flop out of position with an inferior hand. And the last thing you want to look for is post-flop weaknesses because in case you get called, you know of some other ways that you can win post-flop. Maybe they fold a lot to cbets in 3-bet pots. Great, they called you. Bomb the flop right there to get them to fold. Now, here's another example. You are considering a value 3-bet with a strong hand. Things like 10s are better and ace-queen are better possibly, So 3 things here. You want them to have a wide continuation range. Maybe you've seen them call 3-bets with like pocket 7s and ace-10 in the past. You also want to be in position to make it easier to control the pot post-flop. If you're in position, you have more information to work with. You can bet to build the pot, or you can check behind to keep it small, or you can raise their donk bets if you think that'll get them to fold, or raise their donk bets if you think they'll call and when you have a crazy value hand, right? The third thing is you want to find, once again, post-flop weaknesses so that you can go for more value, potentially more value if you hit a really strong hand, or it might make it easier to fold if they show you absolute strength and you know they have you beat now on the flop. So now let's talk about practicing 3-bets. In order to become a better 3-better or become better at 3-bet pots in general, you're going to have to practice 3-betting and practice calling 3-bets as well. So basically, you're looking for good situations in game to make those 3-bets for value or bluffs, and you want to find signs that you're going to get what you want from it. You also have to think about those times when you open the pot and get 3-bet. Do not auto call or auto fold when you face that 3-bet. Think about the situation, think about what you're doing. Remember that you want to practice 3-betting so you gain more experience, and then either make the call or make the fold, or make the 4-bet as well. If you haven't heard them yet, I put out 4 podcasts all about 3-betting. They were episode numbers 104, 105, 107, and 108. They were all part of my MED series of podcasts, and these were all surrounding 3-bets, so make sure you listen to them. And finally, Ruben, what you really need to do is do a ton of studying on 3bets. So listen to those podcast episodes. Also find 3bet related videos or articles by other content producers like Splitsuit or Nathan Williams or Alex Fitzgerald. Just find other things and really immerse yourself in the 3betting world, right? So along with that, the most important thing you can do is do a ton of hand reading practice in 3bet pots. The more you do this off the felt with your 3bet hands or facing 3bet hands, the more the skills and the insights will come to you during your actual play sessions. And you have to check out my series of hand reading episodes on YouTube. Just go to smartpokerstudy.com/66 days of hand reading. It's an entire series, 66 videos where I hand read a different hand every single day. So watch some of those, get a feel for how I do it, practice it on your own, and I really recommend that you make your own challenge. Challenge yourself for 1 week, 7 days in a row of hand reading a 3bet hand, 2 weeks, 20 days, whatever it is. And the more you do this hand reading, the better you're going to get at hand reading off the felt and on the felt. And if it's all around or surrounding 3bet pots, you're going to really increase those 3bet skills. Now, as you review your hands and you practice your hand reading off the felt, you want to filter in your poker tracking database, hopefully using Poker Tracker 4, but if not, whatever. But filter for showdown hands where you faced or you made a 3bet. And make sure that they're older hands so you hopefully won't remember what the villain had. And when you're going through the hand reading process, start by assigning the villain a preflop range and proceed through the streets and narrow that range based on their actions. Now, these hand reading drills, they're really going to help you with other issues as well. For example, you had mentioned not hitting the flop and not knowing what to do when that happens. Well, this hand reading practice, you're going to see a ton of flops where you miss the flop and where your opponent missed the flop. And then reading into these and learning lessons and figuring out the mistakes that you made is really going to help you in game here. So you've got a lot of work ahead of you, Ruben, but thank you very much for sharing this. And I hope this helps all the other listeners out there too. Alrighty, question 2 today comes to us from Max, and it's about improving Cbet skills. Here's what Max said. I've spent a lot of time on your book, Preflop Online Poker, but I feel that a deeper understanding of Cbetting post-flop will boost my skills. Well, thank you very much, Max, for that question, or for the email right there. So I released 4 episodes all about Cbetting when I did the MED series of podcasts. They were episodes 133, 134, 135, and 137. So if you have not listened to those yet, please go back and do so. I'm planning on my next book on post-flop online poker to be released sometime early 2019. So you're going to have to wait a little bit longer for that one, Max. But just like in the first question about 3betting, before you make the Cbet, it's critical that you know why. So, are you going for value or are you bluffing? And here's a study technique I really love. It's an in-game technique, but it also helps you study these skills, right? It's a tick sheet. So, every time when you're considering making a Cbet post-flop, put a tick mark under value or bluff. So, this just forces you to think about why am I betting instead of just clicking that Cbet button. Not Cbet button, instead of just clicking the bet button to make your half pot, 2/3 pot bet. You're actually putting a little bit of thought because you have to figure out which column to mark it under, value or bluff. Also, when Cbetting, you always want to consider your opponent and their range before you click the button. So if they can fold better hands to your bluff, then it's likely a positive EV bluff. If they can give you value with worse hands, then it's likely a positive EV value bet. On the other hand, if they are folding all their worst hands, then it's a failed value bet. And if they are never folding in this spot for whatever reason, then it's an obvious failed bluff. You want to know why you're betting and have a reasonable assumption that they're going to do what you want them to do. Now, when Max sent me this email, I sent my board texture spreadsheet as a reply, which I first discussed back in episode 134. So if you go to the show notes page for episode 134, you can find exactly how to use that sheet. Or if you go to the show notes page for today, you're going to be able to download it there as well. So when you get this spreadsheet, you want to use the spreadsheet and Flopzilla. It's going to give you some very good range and flop analysis practice. So what you're going to do is you're going to assign a range, let's say a 20% range, for example, and you're going to take a look using Flopzilla and that statistics section. You're going to take a look at how often that range actually hits top pair or better and an open-ended straight draw or better. And as you fill it out, you're going through 11 different types of boards. The ace high and dry, the chicken boards, the all baby boards, the monotone middle card boards, all that kind of stuff. As you go through this sheet and work out and think about all these various boards and how the ranges hit them, this kind of stuff is going to ingrain itself into your mind, and you're going to develop an intuitive grasp of how well ranges interact with various boards. And this is going to help you make more positive EV decisions in game. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/smartpokerstudy. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from, and I highly recommend that you get How to Study Poker Volume 1 and Preflop Online Poker. So when you sign up for the free trial, make sure you get Preflop Online Poker as your free book. And then purchase How to Study Poker Volume 1 because it's a cheaper one, right? You might as well pay less and get the more expensive book for free right there. Listen to How to Study Poker Volume 1 first, and then use the skills that you get from that book to help you destroy Preflop Online Poker. So once again, start your Audible trial by visiting audibletrial.com/smartpokerstudy. And one quick shout out today goes out to Mark B, who signed up to play on America's Card Room using my promo code. He got 27% rake back for doing this. He just visited smartpokerstudy.com/ACR. After he downloaded the software, created his account, he used promo code SPSPOD. By doing so, he got 27% rake back, plus, of course, a matching bonus of 100% up to $1,000 on ACR. So, if you want to follow in Mark's footsteps and help support the show, play on America's Card Room by visiting smartpokerstudy.com/ACR. Alrighty, back to class, poker people. Question 3 today comes to us from Daniel, and it's about set mining in 3-bet pots. Here is what Daniel said in an email. Dealing with uncommon preflop situations outside the scope of your book. For example, I raise with pocket nines, get re-raised, and then there's a cold call. Against just a re-raise, this is a clear fold. But here, flopping a set could have immense implied odds. Well, thank you very much for the email, Daniel. I appreciate it. This is a really good question that comes right on the heels of MED Monday episode just 5 days ago, episode number 37, where I covered 5 tips for better set mining. Now, I do want to say that you're right. Preflop online poker does not address every type of scenario that you can face, but the information in the book can be applied to any preflop scenario. So in that specific scenario you mentioned, Daniel, you opened with pocket nines in order to take down the pot with a solid hand. If you get called, you can do post-flop battle with this hand and maybe bluff or value cbet, depending on the board and the opponent, right? Well, now your opponent decided to 3-bet you, and their actions curtailed your original plan because they played back at you. So you can simply choose to fold this hand if it's not in your 3-bet calling range and just move on to the next hand. But if you're thinking about calling and set mining, then all the information in the book about set mining, implied odds, calling preflop, 4-bet bluffing, considering your position, and considering your opponents, all that stuff still comes into play, right? So there are 5 different things that you should be thinking about before you click call in a spot like this. The first thing is just set mining in general and the implied odds. In the book, and always, I recommend set mining with 20 times stacks behind. The reason for such high implied odds is so that you can earn plenty of money in the times that you hit your set and you stack your opponent. This helps to outweigh all the times that you miss your set and lose either a big or a small pot, even the times when you hit your set and lose a big pot. That totally happens, right? So if calling a 3-bet means putting an additional 6 big blinds in the pot, there should be 120 big blinds in the stacks behind for some good implied odds math. The second thing to think about is just calling pre-flop, what that does to you. Your call, it caps your range, and you're telling your opponent, hey buddy, I don't have aces, kings, or queens right now, but my hand is worthy of calling. So your opponents, they can rightly put a ton of pressure post-flop on you in order to get you to fold all your underpairs and your whiffed hands. You told them you don't have aces, kings, or queens, right? By just making that call. So before you click call in this scenario, ask yourself, in this really large 3-bet pot with 3 players, is this a good opportunity to tell my opponents I don't have a strong hand? All right, so the next consideration, the third one, is 4-bet bluffing. So ask yourself, is this a good opportunity to 4-bet bluff? Will a 4-bet to 2.2x, maybe 2.5x, is that going to get both opponents to fold? Is pocket nines good enough to 4-bet bluff with? Because, of course, you don't have any ace or king blockers, right? Or is it better to just fold and lose the 3 big blinds that you open raised with? Now, the fourth thing you need to consider, Daniel, is position. So maybe you opened in the early position and the cutoff 3-bet and the button called. So calling here, it's going to put you out of position versus 2 other players. This is a non-money making situation because of positional disadvantage and range disadvantage. This is actually 100% anti-bread and butter poker, right? And the fifth thing you want to think about are just the opponents. So you want to know what type of opponent you're up against and if they'll make post-flop play difficult on you. It's a 3-bet pot after all, so it's a really big pot going 3 ways, so you have at least 27 big blinds in, right? If both of your opponents, if they hate folding or they always try to win these bigger pots, then earning money in this spot when you don't hit your set, it's going to be super difficult, which we all know you only hit sets 11% of the time. So the other 89% of the time, these aggressive opponents are just going to make you fold post-flop. Challenge! In case you didn't know, if you listen to this podcast or any other poker content and you don't put something from it to use in your next play or your study session, you are completely wasting your time. So having said that, here's my challenge to you for this episode. Download the board texture spreadsheet, whip out Flopzilla, and get to studying. Work on 2-bet or 3-bet ranges and figure out how frequently different ranges hit flops. You also want to listen to episode 134, where I dive into really good detail on how to use the spreadsheet. Now it's your turn to pull the trigger and do something positive for your poker game.
You better wake up. The world you live in is just a sugar-coated topping. There is another world beneath it, the real world. And if you want to survive it, you better learn to pull the trigger.
This episode isn't complete until you head to the show notes page at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod209. When you go there, you're going to find screenshots and links to everything discussed today, and a special link right there to download the board texture spreadsheet. Thanks so much for listening today. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe and leave a review within your favorite podcatching app. This is the best way, other than direct word of mouth, that you can help the show grow. And if you can type or say the word Smart Poker Study, you can find me on Alexa, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. And please, send me your questions, sky@smartpokerstudy.com. Alrighty, poker people, next week in episode 210, I'm going to give you strategies to deal with potentially tilting situations. So word of mouth is the best advertising, and muchas gracias for sharing the show with other poker people. Your sharing and caring is what helps us grow. Until next time, study smart, play much, and make your next session the best one yet.